Hi, thank you for joining us today. We are delighted to have the new superintendent of the Sioux Falls School District with us, Dr. James Stavem. And Dr. Stavem, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, new to Sioux Falls, but not to the Midwest. You are a Midwesterner at heart.
Yes, I am. I was born and raised in Nebraska, small Swedish town of Stromsburg, on the farm where my parents still live.
Oh, wow.
And so, love the Midwest, love seeing for miles at a time, love the heat and humidity, and we're just really happy to be back in Sioux Falls.
Okay, well, we'll hear a little bit more about your career path in just a minute or two, but tell us, when you heard about the position opening in the Sioux Falls School District, what drew you to apply or inquire about the possibility of being the next superintendent here?
Well, you know, there's always a convergence of things that kind of come together around major life decisions, like when you're going to move or change a professional role. And so when we went to Washington, where we were now, we had planned to stay for a number of years, but sometimes life happens, and there were some things with aging parents with some health needs. And actually, I had been thinking that at the point Dr. Maher might retire in a few years, Sioux Falls would be a great place to check out. Well, then he did that a little earlier than I thought maybe he would, and so the opportunity really presented itself right about the time that we were thinking maybe we needed to be closer to home. So then you begin to look at the school district and the community, because it still is a major decision, and you want to go where there's a great match. And so through that interview process, you know, people are interviewing you, but you're also kind of interviewing the whole scenario yourself. And it started off with meeting some really great people, and our board that cares deeply about our students and our school district. And then when we toured Sioux Falls and we saw all of the great development and the health of the community, that was a big plus for us. And then when you look at the school district itself, the growth that's happened and some of the common factors of things that seem to match well with my experience and the ways that I felt like I could add value to the school district, everything just kind of lined up. And then luckily enough, they chose me for the position, and it has just felt like a great match all the way along.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we hope to continue that feeling into the future and do great things for our students, for our staff, and for our community as a whole.
Absolutely.
So your choice of education, how did you land on wanting to get into the role of education? We have a lot of aspiring people who always kind of have that maybe in the back of their mind and don't really know if that's the pathway for them. I am one of those people myself who always sort of had that in the back of my mind and never really actually have gotten into the classroom, but I feel like my own experience, my previous experience matched with the school district, again, like you said, is important. But how did you end up in the role of education?
Well, you know, I think I've talked about my blue chair moment of leadership, and as a child I even had mentors. I had teachers who would give me, you know, old textbooks and let me feel like a teacher. And I had people who encouraged me when I was in high school, and being a good writer and somebody who liked to perform and to be in front of crowds and be with other people in doing the work. And then when I was in college really was where I saw some really great female role models, and some of my professors and the department chair where I went to school were people that I just really admired and came to really respect as professionals. And so I think even in college I knew I wanted to start down that teaching path, but I also began to hear about the possibility of being an administrator somewhere down the way, and saw people with that really long career where they were able to progress through teaching and then some leadership and on into a principalship and then a district leadership role. And so I had great role models, and then I had great mentors along the way too. My first principal, Bill Schrankler, was a wonderful encourager. And so it wasn't when you are a building leader, or if you're a building leader, it was when you're a building leader. And so then as I pursued a master's degree and some of those other degrees that give you the credentials, those also gave me the experiences and the mentors and the people who continue to encourage me along the way. So that's something that's really important, is that we provide great paths to leadership, but great supports along the way with mentors and training and people who will support you all the way through your career. And right now I have 3 or 4 people I can call at the drop of a hat who will help with ideas or problems, or just somebody to kind of bounce things off of. And those mentors are critically important.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, you said you grew up in Nebraska. Your first teaching position, was that in Nebraska as well?
No, of course, like many students, I thought, I need to go see the big wide world. And I actually went to school in Minnesota at Bethel University. It was Bethel College then.
Sure.
And really a big decision point in going there was that I got into the college choir as a freshman, and that was something that was really important to me. And so I did my undergraduate degree and my first master's degree there in ed leadership, and then in the process started teaching in St. Paul Public Schools. And I loved it there. It was a great place to learn a lot of things, and I was in some very diverse schools, and really had great teaching mentors there. And so we were in St. Paul for about 10 years. And then in 2001, made the decision to apply for a principalship in Columbus, Nebraska, which also took us to be back within about 30 miles of Grandma and Grandpa, and people who can come to baseball games and participate in the life of your children and your family. So we were in Columbus, Nebraska for about 8 years. I was a building principal and then a district director of curriculum and instruction. And while there, was pursuing a doctoral degree at the University of Nebraska, where I said I was never going to go. I found myself there anyway, so I am a proud Husker and graduate of UNL. And then became a superintendent in Blair, Nebraska, which is just right outside of Omaha. And we were there for 3 years, and then the opportunity came to look at Lincoln as the associate superintendent for instruction, which of course was a much larger district and a much larger role, and in a great city, the capital city of Nebraska, and loved it. And then decided that I wanted to pursue a superintendency again in a larger district, and that's what took us to Washington for a couple of years. And now we are in Sioux Falls, which is kind of this unique blend of a lot of those places. There are many things that feel very familiar here in Sioux Falls. So I feel like we've come home, and I intend to retire in Sioux Falls.
Oh, that's fantastic. Hopefully your retirement isn't next year.
It's a long ways off.
Okay, good. Well, there is significant work being done in the district at this moment on trying to get protocols set up for the fall. With the current pandemic situation, COVID-19 has altered all of our lives in a variety of ways. Your previous district was sort of smack dab in the middle of all of that, and basically at the front lines, because you saw some of the first really the high number of cases in nursing homes in your area in Washington. Tell us about that, and what experiences from that you're able to bring over and help provide a pathway for Sioux Falls.
Yeah, I was in Olympia, Washington, and we had heard about this COVID virus, and I got a call from the city manager in one of the 3 communities that made up that district. And it was a Saturday morning, and he said, I just want to let you know we're about to be announced to the world that we have the first death attributed to the virus in the United States, which of course meant some pretty significant media coverage and shockwaves really that kind of hit the area very, very quickly, because not every place where Corona came to kind of appear did it with deaths and then multiple deaths in very short succession, and that was really, really hard on people. We had a school just 2 blocks or so from the location where those first deaths occurred, and so that really shook people up, and rightly so. It was new to everybody, and then it was a pretty abrupt version of that. So we quickly convened our emergency operations team that noon, about noon at our district office, and we started to put plans in place that we had already develop to a degree, and of course then you have to adapt to what that new situation is. And so one of the things that I've been very impressed with in Sioux Falls already is that there has been a lot of good teamwork that's happened in planning and preparation, both for what occurred and now what we're planning for in the fall. And really what districts everywhere are wrestling with right now are the current realities in that community, that state, the guidance that's been issued by either our healthcare authorities or our state leaders or our community leaders, and then taking all of that guidance and layering it on top of a school and a school district setting. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those things are very compatible, and sometimes those things are not in conflict, but they're just not designed to fit together very well. So when we, say things like social distancing, when you think about what that looks like with, a group of students lined up in a hallway, and then you line that up with how we typically do supervision and moving, groups of people from place to place, there are some very big logistical challenges, and then the challenges just of all of the protocols that we want to make sure that we have in place with hand washing and with protective pieces like plexiglass at our offices when we come in, and all of the preparation that has to happen. Then you couple that up with the uncertainty of what is the activity of the actual virus going to do in the community, and are we going to be faced again with a scenario where we have to either do a partial or a full change to a remote environment. So that's the work that's happening right now, and it's the layers, and we were talking about it this morning, the layers of how are people thinking and feeling about being back in a school setting. What do we need to do academically to get kids on track who have had some gaps in learning through that remote environment? And then what are we doing with all of the logistics that make that happen? So there's kind of those three big buckets, if you will, that are all having to converge into some really good planned, operationalized things that people can understand with great clarity, and that we can do very, very quickly as the situation warrants.
Yeah, unfolds. And,
yes.
And we know, I think it caught, no matter if we were watching here in Sioux Falls what was happening in the state of Washington, I know we had some early conversations, which we were happy to have, knowing that you would be the next superintendent here. We had a phone conversation about some of the things we should start thinking about, and just that, you might know it's out there, but when it happens and you have to start acting quickly, you're in survival mode. You do the best you can with what you have, and now we have a little bit of an opportunity to do some additional planning because we're not currently in school, and so that planning becomes all the more important.
Yeah. And I think we've gotten great feedback in this community and in many communities where we know what worked well and we know what didn't work well, and we've got to be able to correct some of those things so that we can remain flexible and agile, but that we can keep learning on track, because the last thing we want is for more time to be lost with helping our kids be great readers and great mathematicians and have all of those rich lessons from all of our subject areas that are why we do school, and we don't want them to miss out on those things.
Right. And in terms of learning what worked and what didn't, just to give parents in the community a precursor, if we go back to remote learning, it won't look like it did in the spring, because we've learned a few things. We've picked up, and even in some cases, technology discovered some things that are going to work for us that maybe previously didn't on the fly. And so parents have to kind of wrap their heads around that too, that it's not, even if we say we have to go back to remote learning probably isn't going to look like it did in the spring.
And part of our planning is how are we going to equip families and caregivers and those people that are there to assist our students in a variety of settings. How do we give them the right tools so that they're able to do that and to feel more equipped? Because I know some of what was difficult was just that feeling of helplessness, like I don't know how to help you as well as I want to, and we want people to be better equipped to do that for us.
And certainly we know that in-person delivery of education by a teacher at the front of a classroom with a group of children, that can't be replaced. It just can't. But when you're weighing that and public health, there is a give and take there. But that in-person learning is so critical.
Yes, it is, and that's always the gold standard. And there are things that I think we can take away from that entire experience of saying, you know what, we are light years ahead of where we were to be able to do some things remotely more effectively, that we can keep and that we can grow and do better. There are some things that didn't work because they were never designed for that kind of a platform, and we need to either significantly change how that's done, or we need to leave that part or do that in another way. But core instruction, I think, can be delivered much more effectively should we need to go that route. And I think we'll also have more definition to what we would define as that school day, even if it's in a partially remote or a full remote environment, because we have the capability to do that now differently than what we did.
Right.
Yeah.
So more to come.
Yes.
Honestly, more to come. You know, our goal is we really want parents to have the information, our community to have the information, and so we'll be communicating in a variety of ways in the future to make sure people have an idea about what this is going to look like in the future.
Can plan accordingly. Backup plans for childcare and backup plans for transportation, and what that may look like in terms of daily life if we need to kind of go between those models.
Right. Another thing that is critically important, and I'll just slide right in here, is having updated phone numbers.
Absolutely.
And email information for parents because of this being such a changing situation. So important to have that information updated.
Yes.
So we can get in touch.
Right.
So.
Got to have those phone numbers.
That's right, for sure. Well, you just came to us at all of the exciting times. At the end of June, we were able to wrap up the boundary process of reconfiguring our student attendance areas. That is no one's favorite work, and it's always a big, heavy lift. And we had a lot of community input and involvement, which we're grateful for. And we've said from the beginning, certainly we can't make everyone happy. We don't relish in that fact, but it is what it is. We want to be able to use the resources that we have in the facilities and the space adequately so that students can get the quality education that they need. Now that we've sort of worked our way through that process, what would you say to parents and students who've maybe had a change that they are feeling, you know, just not great about at the moment, but what can you tell them and what hope can you provide them?
Well, you're right. That is one of those processes that never results in a unanimous decision that everyone is agreeing to. And as board members approach that work, as stewards of kind of that public interest and of district resources, boundary decisions are one of those very future positioned kind of decisions that have to be made that in the short term cause some uncomfortable situations, but in the long term you are responsible for being good stewards of those district resources. And how we utilize our facilities with a fast-growing population in a city is always a difficult choice, but those are the hard decisions that have to be made for that greater good of the entire district. The good thing about people being uncomfortable is that means they love their school. And
it's a wonderful problem, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and that people identify with that school. They've had a great experience there, their children feel connected, and that's what we want to have as part of any school. And as the superintendent, my role is to make sure that I can say with all honesty that your child will get a quality education no matter what school they attend in our district. And so one of the things that we will be doing is helping people connect with that new school, helping them to build that relationship in the same ways that they have enjoyed, helping them identify with the mascot and what the school stands for and their motto and mission and those kinds of things. And getting them to that school, I think, is one of the most important things. So setting up tours and the opportunity to meet teachers and to meet people as early as possible so that they begin to feel that connection grow. It's hard, there is no disagreeing with that. It presents logistical challenges when people have to change their routines for pickup and drop off and how they've typically done that for a number of years. I'm experiencing a big dose of that, just getting out of my driveway and going the right direction and relearning all of those processes of daily life. It's challenging. But people have time to anticipate that, and they have time to make those plans. They have time to begin thinking about, how do I connect with other parents? How do I connect with that school community? And how do I bring the best that I can offer to that school to be a great supporter? Because that's what benefits all students in that school and in our entire district. So I'm hoping that parents will see themselves as an asset to that new school, and that they'll do everything that they can to connect and then be connected with from both sides and build the bridge.
Right, exactly. Well, we have those two new buildings that have sort of started this ripple effect of needing to change boundaries, Thomas Jefferson High School and Ben Rifle Middle School. And so we'll have two brand new shiny facilities, and opening a new school or walking into a new school as a student, whether you're a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader or freshman or a senior, there's just a level of, hey, nobody's been here before.
Yes.
We are writing the school's history. And you've had experience of opening buildings in your previous district. So that is something that we can hang on to and that kids can be really excited about.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. And in both of my past districts, there was a lot of construction happening. Last year in our district, we opened 5 new schools.
Wow.
And the year before that, there were 2. And then when I was in Lincoln Public Schools, there were a number of new schools that came online during my time there. And so I've been on everything from the initial, design that came from the architects, or even the selection of the architects, from the very beginning processes to all of the feedback that came around those designs. We don't have enough storage, or the bathroom's in the wrong place, to naming the principal and hiring them, and then working with them and a team to begin planning for staffing and equipment and books and all of the needs that go into a new school. So all of that logistical part, opening up a new school, is very familiar. Then I've also had the really good fortune of seeing principals who've done a magnificent job of shaping the culture of that building before students ever even arrive.
Sure.
As they form their staff, they're very clear on what their expectations are for how we're going to create great conditions for kids to learn. Then it's as students are able to come and visit and choose a mascot and have the big first day, and then give them some leadership opportunities in what they believe is important for students to create for each other, is all part of then when you walk in and you see a great place for kids to learn.
Right.
And it is all kinds of fun.
And it's the feeling, the
The
feeling
energy
of you.
is just unbeatable.
That's great.
Yeah,
And I know
so we'll have all kinds of fun getting that
Yes.
process completed with the 2 that are online, and then who knows in the future what we'll need to continue to add.
Right, and certainly, as we know, our district continues to increase in student population. We don't have a ton of land mass yet left in the Sioux Falls School District, but those are all things that we work with our city engineers and developers, understanding kind of the future of Sioux Falls and where that's headed. So certainly we have to keep our finger on that and make sure that we're adjusting and making those adjustments as needed. What's your plan for getting to know Sioux Falls and the schools?
Well, that's a big picture, and what's really fun is as you do the different pieces that kind of help you do that, it's like a pixelated picture, and the pixels just keep filling in. So it's driving around and looking at schools like I've already been doing this week. It's a very full calendar of meeting people and hearing what's important to them and their history with the district. It's convening groups of people that feel very connected to the district and want to get to know you as a superintendent and find out kind of what you're all about. And then it's the fun of going to activities and restaurants and all of the traditions and things that happen in Sioux Falls, and people share those with you as you meet new people. And then I have a list that I keep on my phone. And so when we're, on a Saturday night, what are we going to go and do? I pull up my list and I work through those things. So if people have recommendations and things that they think I need to visit or participate in, we'd love to know that. But it's just being part of the community in as many ways as possible. And I always try to be very intentional too about the touch point opportunities along the way. If I'm getting some groceries and somebody stops and says, "Hey, are you the new superintendent?" I say, "Yes, I am. Who are you and where do your kids go to school, and tell me about you." And I love that. That's the fun part of meeting people in a district.
Wonderful. Well, my last really on-topic question, and then we have a couple of quick questions to wrap up, but my last on-topic would be, the district has a strategic plan where we focused a lot on reading improvements, student attendance, graduation rates, district culture and the staff needs and expectations and that type of thing. How will you continue that work? Will we see a reboot of the next iteration of the strategic plan? What should people expect in regard to that?
Well, I know that we're kind of at that point where it's ready for a refresh. I also know that we've just come through a rebounding process. We have a heavy lift with return to learn given the circumstances. And so I also want to be really wise about when we undertake that next really big process, because we want it to be a good process where people can be involved and that can happen in all of the ways that we would want that to happen. So that being said, as I look at the goals that have been part of that current strategic plan, I don't know that there aren't too many things that won't continue to be important, but I think what we'll want to focus in on is what are the most important things, and it might be as from the effects of some of what we've had as the closure, and we'll know more about that as we kind of see what learning really looks like when our kids return. And then I think what we want to really pay attention to is, do we have a need for some alignment in some areas, and what does our data tell us are areas that maybe we haven't moved the needle as much as we would like to, and then what is it that we need to do with maybe more intention or more laser-like focus. I tend to like fewer goals and very actionable things that help us monitor those over time so that we're accountable to our community and to our public. So as I learn kind of what is and what has come, I'll have a better idea of where I think we'll want to take that process moving forward. The board and I will talk about that. I'll hear about that from staff and from people as I visit our schools, and then of course community having feedback and input into that process as well. It's a great experience to do that, though not too far along in your tenure, because you learn a lot in the process and you hear what's really important to people.
Okay, now the fun ones.
All right.
When you're not at work, what would we find you doing?
I love to read. I read a lot, but
like what?
All kinds of things. You'll find books on business and CEO leadership type things, as well as prairie fiction from northern Minnesota, and a book about some random topic that I might have found that I was interested in. I typically have about a stack of 6 or 8 books going at one time. I'm one of those people. Yeah, you know what that means. But I love to read. I also love to be outside. And so, when I'm taking a walk, I also like to be out. I like to pull weeds. I know, that sounds kind of strange.
No, that doesn't sound strange at all.
It's kind of therapeutic. I like to mow, so I'm pretty excited.
Do you stop on the way and, like, on your walks and pull weeds in other people's yards?
Well, I try not to go into their yards, but if they're on the public sidewalk and it's peeking up in the crack, I might bend over and pull the weed. But I like to garden, and so I hope to, add some flowers and things to where I live. And I will say, after having ventured into the great Pacific Northwest, we are really looking forward to exploring South Dakota because there are fabulously beautiful places in this state, and we'll start with Sioux Falls and kind of work our way out, but you know, some kayak trips and some things like that I think are on the agenda.
Okay. Good. Cheese pizza or Supreme?
Oh, Supreme. Easy on the onion, so.
Yeah, okay, gotcha there. What's on the radio in your car?
Ooh, that could be any number of things. I'm a big channel surfer.
Okay.
It could be country, could be rock, could be K-Love, could be classical. I will listen to any number of things.
It's got to keep your attention, otherwise
Yes.
you're pushing buttons.
Pushing buttons. I also love the old radio classics channel. If I'm driving a long ways, I will listen to the old radio shows.
Okay, fantastic. Well,
Yes.
thanks for sharing a bit about your hidden life and what you don't necessarily bring to work every single day. But please feel free to bring Supreme Pizza if you'd like.
I will keep that in mind.
Okay. We hope you've enjoyed this last half hour getting to know our superintendent, Dr. Jane Stavem. We look forward to a long relationship with her in Sioux Falls, guiding us and helping our schools be the best they possibly can. Thanks for joining us today.